All right, Mike Rogers, good to talk to you again. Of course, spent some time with you, some quality time last night at the event with Trevor Loudon and the premiere of The Enemies Within. Great film. You have any thoughts about that, or did you want to talk about something else?
Well, I mean, that in itself is fascinating. Just the sheer number of compromised congressmen and senators is stunning, and that just doesn't even begin to touch the number of moles, advisors, and assorted ne'er-do-wells that have been inducted into government over the past few decades. Ever since FDR brought in some like-minded people who, for all intents and purposes, were communists into his government, we've had a growing level of influence. The trouble is that some of the folks in government don't think that differently from communists to start with. But then when you get 80 congressmen and 25 senators or something like that, that are effectively owned and operated by either front organizations for the Communist Party or front organizations for the Muslim Brotherhood, that's pretty scary. And the fact that those people can get onto judicial committee and, intelligence oversight committees, mole? No, these people are sitting there in the open, basking in the sunlight.
They are running. They are running the country.
In keeping with my little "don't panic" icon there, they are in fact, effectively wearing a cloak of invisibility. I'm trying to think of the name of it, but essentially, if you have something that's so outrageous before your eyes, your brain refuses to process it. And this is what's going on. These people are right in front of us. They appear to be Muslims. They appear to be subversives. They appear to be communists. And we just say, that can't be possible. They're just Americans with some of that in their background. No, they aren't.
And at the exact same time, you have people who are willing to disregard candidates because, say, somebody in the KKK endorsed them, or they got a nod or a kind word from somebody who is at least culturally recognized as an unpleasant sort of individual. So you have these people going off the rails, basically, and saying that some candidate is invalidated entirely because of this very, fly-by-night association, when in the meantime you have all of these congressmen and all of these senators who have financial and personal ties to groups and individuals who are sworn to basically destroy America, and they're like, well, that's no big deal.
Right. Well, America is the perfect place to begin if you want to achieve communism, according to Karl Marx. And the reason that's the case is that he postulated, very, very crude paraphrasing, that in order to achieve communism, you first had to effectively have the wealth of capitalism.
Right.
In other words, you had to steal the rich guys' money before you could hang them.
Yeah, because it doesn't work without other people's money. And of course, as we all know, eventually you run out of other people's money.
Well, the perfect example of that is sitting a couple of hours flight to, maybe about 6 hours from here, but a couple of hours flight south of the United States, and that would be Venezuela. When I visited Venezuela in the late 80s, it was one of the more prosperous Latin American nations. It had a large middle class. The place was basically clean and bustling, and plenty of food choices, including local stuff that I personally wouldn't eat, but the locals valued. The point is, it was well supplied, it was well functioning. You had the beginnings of trouble. The government had authoritarian tendencies. I think Chavez was just beginning to cause trouble about then, but essentially you had a robust middle class and a robust military made up of people that were not kindly disposed to this kind of takeover. But hey, the Chavistas succeeded, and Maduro has carried on the legacy. They completely misunderstand how to get the right stuff to the right place at the right time, because only capitalism and free markets can do that. As a result, nothing gets to anywhere anytime, and the people are starving. Not to mention not having toilet papers or paper or any other necessities.
I think it was pretty amusing in the movie. I think it was in the movie when somebody said that a guy took a picture of rolls of toilet paper in the shape of a heart, and sent it to his wife as a gift because he gave her toilet paper because it was so rare and so difficult to get toilet paper in Venezuela that
It, it was a one,
it was really
yeah, it's a wonder. Yeah, a wonder he wasn't mugged on the way home or hijacked. There was about 20 rolls there, making up that giant heart that he photographed. That's exactly the point. Socialism fails every time it's tried, and we have our sworn enemies working to subvert everything that we stand for. And of course, then there's the old chestnut of American exceptionalism. I came here 31 years ago, and I thought the Americans were too big for their boots, and they used stuff that was too big and too greedy and too guzzly, whether you were talking about washing machines or vehicles. But, I've been here long enough. I understand now. I understand what the exceptionalism is. It isn't about bragging about what you've got or what you've done or what you can do. American exceptionalism is the fact that the country is founded differently. It is the epitome of Apple's think different. It is a set of rules that attempt to codify safeguards against the worst of human nature to prevent what happened to Venezuela happening here, to prevent corruption and subversion of our government by greedy people like Hillary Clinton. And it's failing. It's failing because liberty requires eternal vigilance, and the people have enjoyed the fruits of this wonderful experiment, American exceptionalism, and they think that exceptionalism is just leading a happy and prosperous life. They don't understand that you have to guard the source of your prosperity.
it is a problem. I do hope a lot of people see Trevor's movie, even just for the bits about the immigration issue, which is huge, because again, if the Democrats get the one-party state they've been after, and they manage to do it by legalizing illegal immigrants or bringing in more to dilute the natural liberty-loving population, then they can pretty much pass and regulate anything they want, and that's pretty much how we end up being Venezuela.
What's interesting is I was just commenting on an article on Conservative HQ, a venue that I thoroughly recommend, run by one of the oldest and crustiest conservatives in the country, Richard Viguerie, who pioneered the stuff that fills your mailbox, money-raising direct mail, basically. But the point is, he's a great commentator on conservatism, and having been Cruz supporters from the beginning, Conservative HQ came around to Trump and came to the conclusion that never Hillary is the place to be, not never Trump. And also they're analyzing what Trump's bringing to the table and saying, the guy's a bit random here and there, but essentially he's got good advisors and he's bringing about good, good policies, or bringing forth good policies. But one of the things about this is they were talking about how he can win Michigan, and they were talking about Detroit, and of course, and Flint, and that famous line that came out from Trump's campaign this week, which is, it used to be cars were built in Flint and you couldn't drink the water in Mexico. Now, cars are built in Mexico and you can't drink the water in Flint. And, that really resonates with the poor bastards who that's happening to. And it's happening because they've had Democrat-run state and county and town government for so long. It's the fact the water's not drinkable is because of town government malfeasance, basically trying to cheapskate their water supply by disconnecting from Detroit and failing to properly process the water they were pulling from the Detroit River. You'd think in a heavily industrialized area that might not be a good idea without a little extra thought, but they did it anyway. Incredible. But where I was really getting wound up was on the immigrant issue. because they were mentioning these voluntary agencies, such as Lutheran Resettlement Services, who've had to rename themselves because, like everything else liberal, they're becoming a dirty word.
Did
What
you
is
hear?
it?
Hey, did you hear?
What is it with big corporations or liberal organizations that get themselves a bad name and change to something beginning with A, like one of the accountant companies that changed their name to Accenture or something?
Right. Did you hear that a recent survey by I don't know if it was Yale or some other Ivy League organization, and they were talking to municipal government employees and people involved in municipal planning, and they said that you can't use the words climate change anymore in a conversation because it's like a bad word now. Everybody sort of turns you off if you say the word climate change, which means they changed it from global warming to climate change, and now they have to change it to something else because it's such an unpopular term, at least at the municipal level, which kind of relates to the thing you're talking about. We've had local organizations around here who've had to change their name. They don't care. They continually do it. Like we saw in Trevor's movie, you have these groups that just, the Communist Party in the United States was having problems, so everybody just moved over to this other group. Excuse me, this other group that has this other name that sounds a little better, and then they just keep doing the exact same thing they were doing before successfully.
Right, which I think brings us to the point that you can't ban individual organizations. Not only is it probably not constitutional, uh, it doesn't work because they'll keep changing their names. You have to ban what they do and make it illegal to do certain things, particularly to make it illegal to subvert the local hierarchy of management of zoning and permissions and so on and so forth. Which, by the way, I mean, Kelly Ayotte won her primary. Let's just take a tangent for a moment because we're talking about organizations changing their names. You're thinking of the various regional planning boards and things. And of course, Kelly was complicit in the passing of AFFH, which, let's decode that alphabet soup, affirmatively furthering fair housing. And if you decode that mouthful with your secret decoder ring, it basically says telling you what to build, where to build it, and who to put in it.
Hmm.
And it ain't going to be people you like. And
Nope, and
anyway, and
isn't
this
part
is
of that isn't part of
yeah,
that the deal where like what happened with Iowa from Chicago, where Boston could say, well, we need to move some of these people, and you're going to take them.
yeah, and to which the local town's proper response should be, and this is where I was making some comments. Hell no, we won't pay. We won't pay to put them in our schools. We won't pay to house them. We won't feed them. If you, Boston, want to put these people here, you rent the houses, you pay the extra school taxes, you pay for remedial English tutoring, and you pay their welfare until they're self sufficient. What I was actually ranting about in a comment was, about Lutheran resettlement services and what they do. And you know, when I moved to this country, I immediately began paying taxes to the town, the state, and the federal government. As such, I had reasonable expectation of public schooling for my kids. As purchaser of premium medical coverage, I had and continue to expect service whenever needed. When Lutheran Resettlement Services, or whatever name they need to hide under, gets a grant to resettle refugees, they have obligations which they are not meeting. First of which is to make the incoming families self-sufficient. In my opinion, this should include remedial English, lessons in US laws and customs, and getting them sustainably employed, tax-paying members of the community. As a nominal arm of the Christian church, Lutherans should be funding these activities through normal Christian charity. Clue. If the church members in the area can't afford it, the refugees are probably in the wrong place. But here's my kicker. If Lutheran cannot get the refugees self-sufficient, they own that family and the problem until they solve it. Stop taking our tax money and then passing the problem on to the already broke cities and states. Get off the government dole. Call yourselves Christians? Because I don't.
No, and I mean, I don't. obviously, like the Catholic charities that do the same thing, their biggest source of income is resettlement money from the federal government. I'm not sure if that's true with the Lutheran Agency, although it very well may be because there's an awful lot of money there. But you're absolutely right. I think the states and the cities and the counties need to step up and say, look, you have got to do something about the way this is managed because they are. And Manchester is a fine example. Ted Gatsas may have not been the best candidate for governor, but for a while there he was wrestling with these resettlement services and saying, look, we can't afford these people. What are you doing to us?
Yeah, and they're excuse me, they're freaking Christian organizations. That do they not have churches? Do they not have church schools? Here, get a clue. You're bringing these people in. Why don't you educate them in your schools? Because we're not going to take them.
In the day, wouldn't that be the thing? The mission would be to convert them to Christianity or to keep them in Christianity and to do so in the church and to keep them close to the church. Now, they're not doing that anymore, obviously.
Yeah. What was it in the skit that Rush Limbaugh and Ann Coulter did? Something like, let's invade their countries, convert them to Christianity, and take over their governments, or something like that.
Yeah.
Wouldn't it be better if we did that than having them come here and convert us to whatever their belief system happens to be?
Well, we're down to about a minute and a half. I don't know. I think people need to see Trevor's movie. If you don't want to buy the communist stuff and the infiltration, you really need to look at the immigration and the Muslim problem. Even if you ignore the Muslim problem, you really need to look at the immigration situation because you're really talking about bringing in millions of people who are dependent on Democrats, who are going to vote for Democrats. And if you let them vote, you will no longer be able to have anything but Democrat presidents. And once that happens, given the Obama template, there isn't really anything we can do to stop them.
No, so that comes to the interesting point. Let's look at the problem on the micro and macro scale here. Democrats took over places like Detroit and Chicago, made them into one-party cities, and the gentrified locals left. And no, let's not call it white flight. Let's call it the flight of the achievers. There was black flight as well. Anybody who could do better for themselves or had done better for themselves got out while the going was good, got out before the house values completely collapsed, and moved to a different part of the state or another state altogether. When states go bankrupt, in California, people leave. They vote with their feet. What happens if the Democrats succeed in overwhelming the United States, instituting oppressive taxation and regulation, and killing the golden goose? Where do the people go? This is the point that Marco Rubio and Ted Cruz and their fathers make. After the United States, there is nowhere that has or had the same level of opportunity. Where do you go to reclaim your freedom if you allow it to be stolen from you here?
Texas?
Ah, yes, the free Lone Star State, which may well be the lone state of United Americans, turning some words around.
If enough of us went down there, we would really throw off the balance of power that the Democrats have been trying to take over Texas for years. So
but wait, what about that guy that was worried about Guam? If enough of us moved to Texas, wouldn't the country tip over?
Yeah, it would. Texas is pretty big. We could all fit in there. The whole world could fit in Texas, but they don't want to talk about that. I don't know. Maybe the Rio Grande would get a little deeper or wider. Who knows?
I'd be willing to help dredge it to keep Mexicans swimming for longer.
Like a moat.
With sharks and alligators.
Yeah, sharks with laser beams on their heads. Yeah, okay. All right, well, we are pretty much out of time. I don't want to talk more than I have space for in the podcast. Mike, thanks so much for taking time to talk.
That's fine. Let's get in the habit of setting a topic and stuff. But you caught me in mid-comment, so I was ready to rant. It was perfect.
All right, good deal. Have a good night.
Thank you, Steve.
All right, we'll see you. Bye-bye.
Bye.